Good morning, everybody. Terry here with a Wifey Wake Up No Makeup podcast. And I just want to expand on something that I mentioned yesterday in our podcast, talking about how to rekindle and or keep that fire alive in your relationship. And one of the things I mentioned was your demeanor. And just what I did is also reminisce back to the dating relationship, because that's when like the fire was the most poppy. It was fun, right? And getting back into that stage can really help us to reinvigorate that into our current relationship. And one of the things I mentioned was demeanor. And but in the sense of what is bringing back that demeanor of what you were like when you were dating, because what you gave out is also what you got back. And then I thought about this. This is worth expanding. I looked up the definition of demeanor because a lot of times we use words that we know and we think we know, but when we look into the definition, it's absolutely amazing how much more there is to that. And I particularly like Grammarly's definition because it's a little bit more descriptive. Grammarly says your demeanor is your outward behavior. That's where most definitions stop. It includes the way you stand, the way you talk, your facial expressions, and more. And it's so interesting because our demeanor, we can't actually, it's very difficult actually for us to directly observe what our demeanor is like. And the only way you can directly observe it is if, there's a mirror right there, maybe you're being filmed and you watch that footage later, and then of course you reflect. Otherwise, we're relying on other people's either direct feedback, hopefully that of a good friend, and or a professional for that matter, or we're relying on people's actual accurate reactions to our demeanor. And I say accurate because everybody else has their own filters that they're running things through. So it actually is extremely helpful to have someone, I say a good friend, but then I said a professional, because a good friend will be honest with you. Again, you're also relying on their filters, right? But you can ask a friend, in this environment, will you let me know what my demeanor is like? Is it the way that, and be specific, what is it, a professional environment? And are you being received the way that you're hoping to be received? So let me give some examples. This will help. I was going off in hypothetical land. Let's just get specific. So a couple of years ago, now my husband and I are both involved in each other's businesses to a significant degree, but not on a daily basis. And so one day he brought me into one of his meetings and he said, I just want you to observe how I am and how people are reacting. And afterwards I gave him the feedback. And he was really, I wouldn't say he was surprised per se, but it confirmed why he was getting certain reactions back from other people and not necessarily what he had hoped for. And I think that helped him into the future. So hopefully, first of all, you have someone you can rely upon to do that, and then that their feedback is accurate. You might do that with a professional, going to a counselor, a therapist. They see how you are acting and reacting while you're telling the story, and they are obliged to be honest with you. It would be not in their best interest and not in your best interest if they were not honest with you. The main thing also is being receptive to the feedback. Especially with friends, people you're not paying in particular, and even sometimes people you're paying, if you're not willing to receive the feedback, of course, you're not going to get the benefit of that service, paid or not. And so it's really imperative to be receptive to that feedback, no matter how difficult it is to receive. So here's another example. I was fortunate to live in Brazil for a year with a Rotary Exchange scholarship. And with the Rotary Exchange, you live with multiple families with the idea that you get to know the culture through the lens of multiple families. So I lived with 3 families, and in my first host family, I shared a room, or more so, my host sister shared her room with me. And in a lot of ways, I could tell that well, here's another instance of demeanor. I could kind of tell that she wasn't really keen on sharing her room, and it's like maybe neat to have the exchange student, but not to share your space. But there were a few occasions where I could see her sweetness and good intentions come through. So, albeit in a very direct way. I believe she's a Leo, and I end up marrying a Leo. But I come from a family of pretty direct people, so it wasn't necessarily foreign to me. It was okay, and in the end, I appreciated it. So, what did she say? She said, "You will walk like a man." And in Brazil, there's just stark differences. I mean, the women are very feminine, or at least when I was there in the region that I was in, the women were very feminine. And it was just like there wasn't a question of, there was not masculinity really at all in the women. There's so much femininity. And so when I arrived, I, of course, was very American. That's all I knew. And lived there for a year, so I learned to maybe dress a little bit more Brazilian. The big thing that I think was causing me, or part of me walking like a man, was that it was the era of Doc Martens, and I had Doc Marten sandals, which here in the U.S. were very in fashion, and even wearing socks with them. But my host sister said, which, accurately for Brazil, you're wearing skis. And that certainly impeded me walking more feminine like. And if I wished to blend in or to attract a guy, that was getting in my way. And so, but it was great insight, even if those weren't necessarily my goals. Some people are just unabashedly direct like that. And rather than being offended, take the feedback with a grain of salt, because everybody's going to have their own lens and their own motive, but perhaps there's a grain of truth in that as well. So that was hard to receive, but I think the ultimate feedback was very helpful, and helpful when I came back to the US as well, really realizing that they're having experienced that difference, the feminine, nurturing nature of females in particular in Brazil. So where am I getting at? These are multiple examples of how to get this feedback, but when we think of wifey school and we think of where is demeanor important? Well, yesterday I mentioned, your demeanor, your character can really take on a routine, a rote way of being as you get further and further years down the road into your relationship. And it's very easy to start just doing things by rote and forgetting to simply smile at your spouse, your significant other, and like I mentioned yesterday as well, greeting them at the door. One quick test to see like how far you've diverged from that early cheery, happy demeanor to acting by rote is notice when your pet walks into the room or you come home and you see your pet. How much more animated are you to greet or receive the greeting of your pet than when you encounter your spouse? And now, granted, most of us are going to, be much more animated with our pets. I think it's kind of where we are at these days. But if you're greeting your pet is way up here and greeting your spouse is here, that's a big difference. And whether you overtly say it or not, they can perceive like, wow, she loves our dog more than she loves me. And again, I'm speaking from 20 some years of marriage experience. This is something that I really have to be aware of myself, because I can get so focused on work and what I'm doing, whether I'm working at the kitchen table or I'm in the kitchen or at my desk. I can get so focused that, my default face is kind of an indifference, not even dismissive, but just like, just almost ignoring. And we know the phrase that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, a picture is just that. It's a photo, it's a capturing of your demeanor in the moment. So why wouldn't your demeanor be worth 1,000 words or more? And what is your demeanor saying to the people around you, especially the one that you love the most, that you're closest with? What is your demeanor saying to them? And the challenge is, again, we cannot easily directly observe our own demeanor. So we're relying on the feedback we're getting from other people. So if you feel that your husband is continually being short with you, or and any other kind of negative emotion, just consider, what is it that you're delivering? And of course, words have a lot to do with it as well, but you'd be amazed how much the demeanor, your stance, are you standing receptively and openly, or are you standing kind of in a maybe withdrawn, or just not happy kind of stance? Your face especially can say so much. And maybe enlist the help. The challenge is also that your spouse is the only other one, other than maybe kids, that are around all the time. So to have a friend come in or a counselor come in and give you direct feedback is basically impossible. Maybe you're open to your husband or kids giving you feedback on, observe me over the next couple of days. What would you say would be my default expression on my face? It could be very humorous. So if you're someone that can take things lightly or turn around, like me being told, you look like you're walking on skis, you walk like a man, I turned that around into like imagining that and like, okay, that's pretty comical, and the way that she phrased it, and turned into gratitude as well. Hopefully it's tough. Hopefully you can try that out. But I realize that is difficult. So I have a few other tips that you can use to observe yourself as well. Like I mentioned, the good friend, the direct feedback from your spouse, a counselor, whomever. And it could be also, they may not be able to observe you in the household, but it could be you're telling a story about what happened recently, or what would have been the goings on at home. And what is your regular demeanor on your face? What is your face telling about the story other than the words? Similarly, using that same concept, film yourself. Do a vlog, but don't watch yourself while you're filming. Most people have a really hard time watching themselves when they're being recorded. But instead, tell that story about how family life has been for the last month or so. And I got a frog in my throat. And instead of telling a friend, imagine your friend is there. So you're actually recording yourself, and you're telling your friend, but you're not watching yourself doing the recording, so that you react more naturally. Then go back and watch the recording, watch it regular time, watch it with the audio off, and watch it scrubbing through. And by scrubbing, I mean by take that play bar and just slowly move it, and see what your expressions are in between the words that you're saying. And I just did an exaggerated version of that, but what you'll see is the different kinds of expressions that you have that are actually saying what you're thinking while you're talking. You will be absolutely amazed by what comes up. And then let's see. Yeah, those, and if you really want to stretch yourself and start getting out of those habits and out of those ruts, keep filming yourself. That could be a way of doing that if that's cool for you. Doing a vlog perhaps, or taking acting classes. I haven't done that one personally, but that one certainly comes to mind. You can take dancing classes because dancing is about, of course, the physical art and expression, right? And as a dancer, also there can be the facial expression that goes along with that. Sometimes, depending on the type of person you are, I know for me this is challenging. I have more of kind of a stoic demeanor. I don't know if stoic is the right word. My husband would probably have a better description, but I'm not always super animated. I have to really think about it, and doing online classes, doing vlog podcasting type of stuff has really helped me to be aware of at least showing some more expression and being aware of what are my default expression modes. A lot of them we reflect the expressions that we saw when we were growing up because that's how we learn to express ourselves. So those, boy, it's a project. It can, depending on depending on where you're starting from, but it's absolutely something to be aware of, and it can make a huge, huge difference. I think we've all, and I'll end with this. We've all met someone where, or had an instance where someone was perhaps scowling, they were being dismissive, maybe half looking at you because they had to be in your presence, but they were dismissing you, or they roll their eyes, which is like 10,000 words all in one. Rolling eyes is really, really dangerous, and I've heard it's very much a predeterminer of divorce as well. So be really careful about rolling your eyes or just simply ignoring someone. Whether you're focused on a task, on something else or not, acknowledging the one you love the most, and especially as the years go by and you get in those habits and those routines, it is so imperative to continue to recognize that person as they walk into the room, as they acknowledge you, as they're sharing something with you, just like you would want them to acknowledge you as well. And why am I going on and on about this? Because this is something that I've had to work really hard at. I think, like I mentioned earlier, I tend to get really focused in what I'm doing and can justify it pretty good too. And whether it's me, whether I'm inadvertently ignoring or dismissing, or overtly because I'm so focused on something that I'm like, just please don't even bother me. If I didn't have a husband who was such a good communicator, things would be really rough because he's expressed what that feels like to him, what it actually means, what it seems like I'm saying to him by having that demeanor. And that's been really important. And thankfully, he's shared that with me, so I can share that with you as well. Apparently, most men, because women complain about this, are not in touch with their feelings or communicate them. And whatever level that is true, I'm thankful at least my husband has explained to me why my demeanor is so important in our relationship to him, and so I can share that with you. Okay, I could go off on so many other directions of this. This is so important, and I'm still putting pieces together on this, even after 27 years of marriage. So I'd love to hear from you. What have been some ahas in your relationship? Have you also had to overcome maybe a certain habitual way of being and demeanor? There are many different ways of being that maybe you've had to be aware, and especially if you have any other tips on how to become aware of one's demeanor, your own demeanor, because again, you're inside yourself. You're not outside yourself to observe yourself. Okay. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, share. If a friend came to mind, please share it with them. And take care and have a wonderful day, everybody. Bye bye.